There are great leaders. Then there are remarkable leaders, ranging from handling of the economy to intelligence, from personal background to leadership abilities. All of these qualities make up what's said to be the most powerful position in the world. That's right, an American president. And who are these exceptional human beings? And when ranked, what will the American people think? Yes, there may be some that disagree with the order, but none can deny it takes a remarkable person to lead a country. So with that said, ranking from 20 to 1, we give you the top 5 remarkable presidents of all time. George H.W. Bush. 6 months after the United States entered World War II, following the Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, Bush enlisted in the U.S. Navy. Immediately after graduating from Phillips Academy on his 18th birthday, he became a naval aviator taking training for aircraft carrier operations aboard the USS Sable. After completing the 10-month course, he was commissioned as an ensign in the Naval Reserve at the Naval Air Station Corpus Christi on June 9, 1943. Just 3 days before his 19th birthday, which had made him one of the youngest aviators in the Navy. Bush was promoted to lieutenant junior grade on August 1st, 1944. On September 2nd of 1944, his aircraft was hit by flank during an attack, but Bush successfully released bombs and scored 7 hits. With his engines ablaze, he and one other crew member bailed out. Bush spent 4 hours in his inflated life raft, protected by fighter aircraft circling above until the submarine USS Finback came to their rescue. In 1976, Ford appointed Bush director of the Central Intelligence Agency, better known as the CIA. He served in this role for 357 days from January 30th, 1976 to January 20th of 1977. The CIA had been rocked by a series of revelations, including those based on investigations by the Church Committee regarding illegal and unauthorized activities by the CIA, and Bush was credited with helping to restore the agency's morale. In his capacity as the director, Bush gave national security briefings to Jimmy Carter, both as presidential candidate and as presidential-elect. In 1999, the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, was named George Bush Center for Intelligence in his honor. John Quincy Adams. Before becoming president, Adams served as Secretary of State throughout President James Monroe's 8-year presidency, from 1817 to 1825, taking office in the aftermath of the War of 1812, which was a conflict fought between the United States, Great Britain over Britain's violation of the U.S. maritime rights. Adams thought that the country had been fortunate in avoiding having any territorial losses, and he prioritized avoiding another war with a European power, particularly Britain. He also sought to avoid exasperation of sectional tensions, which had been a major issue for the country during the War of 1812. One of the major challenges confronting Adams was how to respond to the power vacuum in Latin America that arose from Spain's weakness following the Peninsular War. In addition to his foreign policy role, Adams held several domestic duties, including overseeing the 1820 census. As the Spanish Empire continued to fracture during Monroe's second term, Adams and Monroe became increasingly concerned that the Holy Alliance, or Prussia, Austria, and Russia, would seek to bring Spain's colonies under their control. In 1822, Monroe administration recognized the independence of several Latin American countries, including Argentina and Mexico. And in 1823, British Foreign Secretary George Canning suggested that the U.S. and Britain should work together to preserve the independence of these fledgling republics. The cabinet debated whether or not to accept the offer, but Adams opposed it. Instead, Adams urged Monroe to publicly declare U.S. opposition to any European attempt to colonize or retake control of territory in the Americas, while also committing the U.S. to neutrality with respect to European affairs. In his December 1823 annual message to Congress, Monroe laid out the Monroe Doctrine, which was largely built upon Adams' ideas. In issuing the Monroe Doctrine, the United States displayed a level of assertiveness in international relations, as the doctrine represented the country's first claim to a sphere of influence. It also marked the country's shift in physiological orientation away from Europe and towards America. Debates over foreign policy would no longer center with the Britons and France, but would instead focus on Western expansion in relations with Native Americans. The doctrine became one of the foundational principles of the U.S. foreign policy. Ronald Regan. Regan was raised in a poor family in a small town of northern Illinois. He graduated from Eureka College in 1932 and worked as a sports announcer on several regional radio stations. Regan was twice elected president of the Screen Actors Guild, the labor union for actors. In the 1950s, he moved to television and was a motivational speaker at the General Electric factories. Reagan had been a Democrat until 1962, when he became a conservative and switched to the Republican Party in 1964. In 1964, Reagan's speech, A Time for Choosing, earned him national attention as a new conservative spokesman. Building a network of supporters, he was elected governor of California in 1966. As governor, Reagan raised taxes and turned the state's budget into a surplus. Speaking at the Berlin Wall on June 12, 1987, Reagan challenged the Soviet Union's leader Gorbachev, saying, "If you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Open this gate. Tear down this wall." At Gorbachev's visit to Washington in December 1987, he and Reagan signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which eliminated an entire class of nuclear weapons. The two leaders laid the framework for a strategic arms reduction treaty. When Reagan visited Moscow for the fourth summit in 1988, he was viewed as a celebrity by the Soviets. At Gorbachev's request, Reagan gave a speech on free markets at the Moscow University. Andrew Jackson. Born in the Carolinas, Jackson became a frontier lawyer. He served briefly in the United States House of Representatives and in the House State Senate, representing Tennessee. After resigning, he served as a justice on the Tennessee Supreme Court from 1798 until 1804. He was appointed colonel of the Tennessee militia and was elected to its commander the following year. He led troops during the Creek War of 1813 to 1814. The subsequent treaty of the Fort Jackson required the Creek surrender of vast lands in present-day Alabama and Georgia. In the concurrent war against the British, Jackson's victory in 1815 at the Battle of New Orleans made him a national hero. Jackson then led U.S. forces in the First Seminole War, which led to the annexation of Florida from Spain. Jackson briefly served as Florida's first territorial governor before returning to the Senate. He ran for president in 1824, winning a plurality of the popular and electoral vote. William McKinley. McKinley had built his reputation in Congress on high tariffs, promising protections for American business as well as paid American factory workers. With Republicans in control of Congress, Ways and Means Chairman Digley introduced the Digley Act, which would raise the rate of wool, sugar, and luxury goods. McKinley supported it, and it became law. McKinley was the last president to have served in the American Civil War and the only one to have started the Civil War as an enlisted soldier, beginning as a private in the Union Army and ending as a brevet major. After the war, he settled in Canton, Ohio, where he practiced law and married Ida Saxton. In 1876, he was elected to Congress, where he became the Republican Party expert on the protective tariff. His 1890 McKinley tariff was highly controversial. He was elected governor of Ohio in 1891 to 1893, steering a moderate course between capital and labor interests. With the aid of his close advisor, Mark Hanna, he secured the Republican nomination for president in 1896 amid a deep economic depression. He defeated his Democratic rival, William Jennings Bryan, after a front porch campaign in which he advocated sound money, the gold standard unless altered by international agreement, and promised that high tariffs would restore prosperity to America. In the wake of McKinley's election in 1896, African Americans were hopeful towards progress of equality. McKinley had spoken out against lynchings while governor, and most African Americans who could vote supported him in 1896. Now that's remarkable. And now that you know what makes these men remarkable, could you do us a favor and press that subscribe button? Or better yet, press that like button. Or better yet, just leave a comment. If you don't like us, leave a comment. If you have something you think is remarkable that we need to be discussing, please leave them at this address. Other than that, we'll be bringing you the 15 through 11, and have a blessed day.